I don't know if y'all heard that song, Somebody's Daughter, but we thought it would.
That's Neil Towns. I thought it was kind of apt. It could go actually somebody's kid, somebody's son or daughter.
Yeah.
But
it just made me think of Jeffrey Epstein's victims, all those girls. You know, they're somebody's daughter.
Awesome.
But anyway, we just thought it was an appropriate song. You know, it doesn't seem like our government or the law enforcement agencies are looking out for children, but we are. Anyway, this is the Ides of September. It's Friday the 13th.
Full moon tonight. All kinds of portents. And portents can also be positive. So
yeah, this is good. We do the Ides in a gesture of making the Ides great again, because if you saw our earlier videos we did a year ago, it was about Trump making America great again, and we were going to make the Ides great again, because the Ides used to be a time of celebration. And so
New Year, planting.
And even crops, though we can talk about some dark stuff on here, it's kind of neat that we still have, you know, right now, while everything's free, we can still do that, and it matters. So while we still have this tool, we're going to use it for good. So anyway, we called this "We Are the Overton Window" for a reason, and we're going to talk about now that Jeffrey Epstein's dead. What's next? If some of you saw my video from yesterday, I talked about how they're trying to cut this scandal off at just with Jeffrey Epstein. They want to delay. They're walking through the steps and making it look like they're. Well, actually, what are they doing? Are they even acting like it right now? I don't know. But anyway.
Barr said that the co-conspirators should not rest easy, but I don't see why they shouldn't rest easy. They should probably sleep at night just fine because
they seem to be fine.
There's no pressure on them.
In my video yesterday, I was talking about how I've noticed that's what they do for a lot of these prominent pedos and bigger pedo rings that come to light is they cut it off at the one. They did it with Jerry Sandusky.
Joey.
They did it with Jerry Sandusky. If you go back and read the news articles about Jerry Sandusky and his 2 Mile Foundation, or I can't remember the name of the kids' charity, but that was where he got all his kids that he abused. But if you read the mainstream media articles, you'll learn that he was supplying other wealthy people with boys. And
what's happened with that?
They're still out there.
Nothing.
And, of course, Robert Mueller's been doing that since the late 90s with David Asimov, Isaac Asimov or something. But anyway, they're going to try to cut it off and contain it with just him, but we're not going to let them. And we're also going to talk about Joy Ito, who is one of the scientists at MIT Media Lab that was taking
former
money.
Scientist.
Former scientist. And then also Aaron Schwartz, who killed himself a few years back, because now that all of this stuff has come to light about MIT, it ties into Aaron Schwartz and why we don't think Aaron Schwartz killed himself. And so anyway, I'm going to let Lou talk about why we're talking about the Overton window.
All right, so the Overton window is a term that comes from a man named Joseph Overton. He actually died in 2003 in an ultralight accident, which, a lot of people we talk about die in accidents or commit suicide. But Overton, he postulated a theory about what politicians can actually talk about in the world. It's basically, the Overton window is the range of ideas that the public will accept. And so we've got politics. I think that going back before the internet and stuff is that it was easy for politicians, media jointly to kind of shape this window for us and show us what things look like. And now, with the election of Trump in 2016, it kind of reframed it or moved it over. And I think what Trump did is one key thing with the Overton window is that politicians try to shape it, but they don't. Politicians respond to it. And we are the Overton window, the people out in the public, and you have an effect on it by being passive. And so if you're not active and you're not pushing back on terrible, evil ideas and things like that, then you are helping the other side frame the Overton window for us. And then that's what politicians are doing.
Exactly. That's one of the things they're trying to do right now.
Too much of the public, except people are not getting upset about stories anymore. They're, I guess, maybe cynicism and desensitized and over it and tired, but we can't be.
But we have the power to keep that Overton window where we want it or to move it. It's all up to us. And trying to normalize pedophilia and the drag queen story hour, that's about them trying to shift the Overton window, but they can't do it unless we let them.
Right. And then what Trump did was he didn't change the Overton window. He saw where it was and where it was looking. He tapped into that, and he, sometimes he kind of strays and gets away from some of it, but at least he does, by emotion instead of logic. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think also another thing that he does is he'll move
fear,
it.
The main part.
He knows how to move it himself because he has the pulse on. Just like with this, I don't know if y'all saw earlier with the vaping. There's been a statement from Trump about the vaping, and it's drastically different than coming out and making it all illegal. Well, he heard from all of us. There was a backlash. We know there was a backlash, and he listened to it. So he moves it. We can help him move it where we want it. Trumpy Bear is in the background. Yeah. He breaks the Overton window. Yeah, they have to keep rebuilding it.
Right.
But the left is trying to. They're always trying to push it in.
They're trying to shift it, and they go full tilt on some far out ideas in order to get kind of like here nearby where I live, is there a city trying to annex a huge area that's twice as big as the city itself. They're going for this huge amount because they're going to settle for this small piece.
Right.
And so that's what they're doing with these ideas and normalizing so much crap.
But the people out there in this community can change that, because we had the
Right.
same thing going on in our community, and it took us a few years, but we did the same thing. We rose up. We got them to pass a bill at the state saying that if you're going to annex any part of the city, you have to take a vote, and you have to get more than 50% of the vote. Like, they had this 20-year plan, and we stopped them in their tracks. So that's where we, the people, we are the Overton window. So we can let it go
And
as
so,
far
yeah.
left or right as
Look
we
into
want.
Joseph Overton a little bit if you like.
Yeah, I didn't know the Overton window was named after a dude.
He was VP
That's
of
a
the
perfect example. California vaccination.
right. And it's the way they report it. But the thing is I saw Sarnovich down there doing it, showing his videos and stuff, and we saw a side to the women, that what their arguments, what they were making about kids who were actually
It didn't
harmed.
match.
And the even local media there was reporting anti-vaxxers protest a bill, and
They weren't anti-vaxxers.
I tweeted at that young lady. I said, "You are not a reporter. You are an editorialist."
She's a repeater.
You're horrible.
They're not reporters, they're repeaters. That's what I call them now.
But they totally just they corrupt, but they can't get away with it anymore, and that's what has them so scared. So we're gonna touch on Overton window again towards the end of our scope here tonight. And Yvonne, we've got some good stuff about the MIT scandal. The supposed they got $800,000 from Jeffrey Epstein. In reality, it's more like 9 or 10 million, maybe even more.
Right.
And there's other people besides Jeffrey Epstein involved in
you know,
working
Bill
with
Gates
this
is
guy.
silent. You know, there's a lot going on this front right now. But the main one, Joy Ito, who was the director of the MIT Media Labs at MIT. So they were getting money from Jeffrey Epstein. So the story breaks, and then after he dies, you know, it just kind of blows up. And there's a New York Times article that's written where they try to minimize MIT's role in it, and they say, oh, you know, we only got 800,000, and you know, they didn't know, you know, about Jeffrey Epstein, and then you find out that Joy Ito is on the board of the New York Times, who wrote that article, and then the Daily Beast does a blockbuster article exposing the fact that they were getting 7.5 million, and the emails that show they were trying to hide the money. They were saying, you know, don't mark it as Jeffrey Epstein money, mark it anonymous. So that showed you that they knew exactly.
Because MIT had a list of people that were ineligible.
Right.
And Epstein was on this list.
And they told Epstein,
for donation.
And they told Epstein, look, you know, we're not going to be able to like use your name, you know, out in public. So, you know, that shows they knew what was going on. They knew what was up. So I started looking at this Joy Ito guy and looking at his background. And
man, does that turn into a rabbit hole?
Boy, is it. So Joy Ito's he's around, I think he's around our age, 50, maybe a little older. But anyway, Joy Ito, guess who his godfather? His godfather was Timothy Leary. So I started like Googling his name on YouTube and stuff, and I turned up some videos with him and Barack Obama. There was an interview with him a couple of years ago, and
with Wired magazine. Because he helped edit Wired or something.
Yeah. And so he's talking about AI. Basically, in a nutshell, what they're talking about is transhumanism and how everything's going to be different. Like this big tech is going to merge with humans, transhumanism, all that good stuff. And in the videos, towards the end of one of them, Ito is talking about how, you know, when Ito says that he helped create the internet, and you know, I'll take his word for that.
He probably had a little bit more to do with it than Al Gore did.
Yeah, and he said that when they first created the internet, that they thought that, you know, it was going to be just great for democracy. And he and Obama are like, and he laughing because they don't think that's how it turned out. So they think the internet has been devastating for democracy. And at the end of this video, Ito said, but we do think we can swing the pendulum back the other way. So I'm guessing they don't like the fact that the internet is allowed all of us, well, we elected Trump.
A lot of pedestrians to to
Yeah.
come in and start reporting stuff and finding out things and then telling other people.
Right.
The way media or the news used to be.
This Joy Ito guy, his PhD was in media and governance. I found that interesting. He wrote his thesis. He has a PhD. He wrote his thesis, and it was called "The Practice of Change." And it, you have to go read it for yourself. I'm not going to go into the particulars of his thesis and all that he believed, but he's a transhumanist. They think they're going to perfect humans through chips and when he talks about when he's talking about change, he's talking about changing the way we think. And you know that the left uses code words, or they don't really come out and say what they mean. So when he's talking about the process of changing how we think, I think they mean that literally. Time magazine called him in 1977. He was a member of the cyber elite. Vanity Fair in 2005 wrote that he was part of the next establishment. I should have checked to see if that was Vicky Ward.
Oh, yeah.
I figure Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, I just think, they said establishment is not even a thing, but they're talking about it in 105.
Right. So, Joy Ito, if you read about his background, he comes from just this progressive. It's the same, like when you read about Obama, you understand how heavy he was brought up in, like, communism, progressivism, his mother, his grandparents, and it's the same thing with Ito. At MIT now, I just read a little while ago that they have a petition now where they're trying to get him to not step down. There's like 100 of mostly MIT professors. Well, who are some of those people that are signing on saying, you don't need to resign? George Church. George Church was one of the people who've been to the island and who got money, and he recently had to apologize for his connection. He didn't know nothing. Nicholas Negroponte. I don't know if you know that name.
And he's a co-founder of the media lab, isn't he?
Oh yeah, Nicholas Negroponte is the co-founder of the MIT Media Lab. So I started looking at the MIT Media Lab itself last night, and I pulled up this one. Hey Dan, you'll like this one. I pulled up this video, and it's called. This was in 2016. It's called "Forbidden Research Panel on Robots, Virtual Reality, and Deviant Behavior." If you watch the video, the deviant behavior is pedophilia. And in the video, you've got like these 3 professors, and they're all talking about the problem that we have in society where we treat pedophiles as immoral and, they're bemoaning.
Instead of the victims of disease that they say they are. They're saying that they're victims and they can't.
And they go into like how AI, when they create these robots, they talk specifically about, for these pedophiles, that they'll be able to order these robots that are children, and they're pondering whether that's wrong and bad for society. But in the video, all throughout the video, you understand MIT Media Labs is trying to they're part of the group that wants to normalize pedophilia. Now, he was getting money from Jeffrey Epstein, who was himself a pedophile. But then they want to all act like they don't know. They all know. It's disgusting. The MIT Media Labs I think there's a bigger scandal there, and I hope that it breaks open. But that's where Aaron Schwartz comes in. Do y'all know who Aaron Schwartz is? I had remembered seeing this story a few years back, because I think it was in 2013 that he
committed suicide.
So anyway, he was 26. He was actually a visiting fellow at Harvard. But anyway, the government was going after him.
He was a research fellow at MIT. I know that.
Yeah.
He had a beautiful fiancée.
There's nothing. They say that he was depressed, but I didn't see that. But anyway, he was busted for hacking into MIT and downloading. Like, there's this database called JSTOR that has a bunch of their health manuals or something. I don't even know. Anyway, these manuals and stuff, they're free of charge. And if you're a student at MIT, you have access to it. So they were going after him for hacking into that and downloading those files and putting them into one place. And I still don't understand what he did wrong, because it was a free.
Yeah. That
doesn't make sense. So anyway, they bust him. The local authorities all drop their charges while the feds step in.
And even MIT doesn't even pursue it any further.
They don't. The JSTOR people don't. And then the local authorities backed off of. I think they dropped their charges though, just so the feds could come in. And so the feds come in. They do this investigation, and the Secret Service is involved and leads that investigation, which I don't.
This was all just overkill. Look at all the people that get away with stuff. And
he was facing like 50 years. They were throwing the book at him, and it didn't make sense, because I still to this day can't tell you what he did wrong. They did after his death. They did release video of him going into this closet and putting this device, I guess, where he was downloading stuff, but the closet that he went into was unlocked. Mm-hmm. The files that he was downloading were free to its students. The whole thing just didn't make sense. So they offered him a plea deal of 6 months, and
he would plead guilty to 13 felonies,
and he refused it, because I think he didn't do anything wrong.
And so they were going to have to go to trial because they refused the plea.
Right.
And it's our suspicion, alleged, that he was going to embarrass them with his defense.
Well, now that you look at this case with Epstein, and then you look at Joy Ito, and then I'm looking at the MIT Media Lab where they're trying to normalize pedophilia, I just think that also after this case was dropped, MIT would not release the unredacted documents that were supposed to be released during discovery. And what they did is they released this 182-page, you know how like they do where they release like the summaries of what happened. They don't release they haven't ever released what they really had on him. And I'm thinking there's a reason they haven't released what they had on him, and I'm guessing that's why they went after him. So the whole thing doesn't make sense. And then you start looking at the people involved on the federal level, the names of the people that went after him. And so I stumbled on this one. Her name is Carmen Ortiz, and
she was the boss at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston that led that prosecution.
Yeah.
The guy that worked for her, the prosecutor that prosecuted this case, Stephen Heyman.
Or was it Nolan? Oh, Stephen Heyman. You're right.
I think he's still there. So where's he's a big computer crime specialist at the Justice Department. So why isn't he prosecuting this stuff now? Because there's these emails where they're hiding where all this donation money is coming from. And, if you want to go after some people, how about going after the pedophile financier?
That's the thing. You think about what they did with this Aaron Schwartz dude, and how they just throw the book at him, and how the whole thing unfolded. And then you watch how Epstein, how everything is just like they didn't even go to raid his island until after he died.
And they keep talking about co-conspirators, but there's nothing happening. And everything's slow. You take McCabe, supposedly the deputy
DAG,
the deputy attorney general said, no, I'm not going to stop an indictment. Here we are, almost 2 days later. So justice can move swiftly when they want to, and I'm not saying justice the word the way it is. I'm talking about the Department of Justice. They can turn on a dime, and they can
move like lightning. Remember when we were talking about Sidney Powell's license to lie and an Enron case, and they went through that from the time the indictments were filed till they were convicted. It was like 6 weeks. It was, and that was a huge, involved, complicated case. Yeah. So they can move as fast as they want. But this Carmen Ortiz lady, I started looking at her and some of her, just to see, if she was on any prominent cases. And she was actually
on some big cases.
She was admonished by a federal appeals court in 2004 for advocating for a harsher jail term for a fraud defendant than she had promised him in a plea agreement.
She broke her own plea agreement with the defendant.
This is the DOJ.
And the judge called her out on it.
Right.
There was something with that Heyman dude too, and he still has his job. He lied to a judge. The prosecutor in the Aaron Schwartz case lied lied in court filings
that's right.
to the judge, and he's still a prosecutor for the Justice Department.
It's just the same thing that we're looking at with General Flynn and with Weissman and all those people. And the judge that's over them right now already knows how bad Weissman is, because Weissman did the same thing in the Enron.
In Stevens, yeah.
Okay. But nothing ever happens to them. So this Carmen Ortiz lies to this dude about his plea agreement, but she's still at justice. And so there's another case where there was, and I had read about this. There's a hotel in New Jersey called the Tewksbury, and they went after him through. She went after him through civil asset forfeiture. They owned that hotel outright.
Yeah, and that's the only reason they did it, because there was no mortgage attached to it.
Right. And they were able to fight back and keep a hold of their hotel, but I mean, after much ado, after being out money, out.
And thank you, Sandra Day O'Connor, for helping the Supreme Court expand the right of the government to come in to take stuff from people who've not even been accused of a crime.
And what they did, how they took this hotel, is they said there were these drug deals going down, drug deals that the owner knew nothing about.
And they even recognized, the prosecutors recognized it. It's just because they try to call it a nuisance, and he won. But how much money did it cost him, and how much anguish and stress did him and his wife go through, because that was supposed to be their retirement.
And during that trial, it was learned, because there was one of the detectives on the stand that had to admit his job was to look for properties that they could take. And if you didn't have at least 50% equity in the property, they wouldn't go after you. So they were looking for money. They're thieves. Just like when Sidney Powell wrote the book License to Lie, they had a license to steal. Just like the CIA has a license to kill. You know, it's just, our government is so corrupt. And then you look on down the line, she's got several. She was the Boston Marathon bombings. I didn't even know that. She was involved in the Whitey Bulger in the original case. Of course, that ties in with Robert Mueller because so, you know, that's all kind of shady. So you have all these kind of shady characters for the government who went after Aaron Schwartz, this 26-year-old boy who was just we watched a video. It's a 21-minute video, and I encourage you to watch it because it's really interesting. I don't know if y'all remember when the SOPA, I forget what that stands for, but it was about like net neutrality and Congress.
It was about the copyright. It was about basically giving any corporation a way to shut down a website.
Right. And so
because they say there's copyright
and I was on Twitter.
Violations.
I was on Twitter when that was going on, and there was a hashtag. We were all fighting it, but I had no idea that Aaron Schwartz, he was kind of spearheading that whole thing. It was his nightmare for, like, if that happens, for that to get passed. But what's interesting is his fear that they would just be able to shut down websites and keep people from talking. Since his death, it's happened. So I don't know.
Well, he stopped it. They didn't think they could, because both parties. This is, you know, there's always bipartisanship when they're hanging on to power, and both parties were signed off on this bill, except for Ron Wyden. Is he out of Oregon?
Yeah.
He's out of Oregon.
There were others.
Ron Wyden slowed it down, and then he bought them time, and then he garnered.
It blew up on social media.
And that's what they can't stand, is that the internet and social media is that we have power just with individual people all over the country.
And what was interesting about this bill was everybody in Congress was on the same side. And they were going to pass this bill. Like, they introduced this bill one day, and it was going to be passed in like 2 days. And you and I know, we all know, Congress doesn't pass bills like this in 2 days. So they were all on the same page. So I don't know if they were paid by lobbyists and, you know, they all came together for what, but it was just an odd situation. So he was like, he stopped them. So he was already on their radar.
And he says in the speech, and go to YouTube and search Aaron Schwartz keynote, How We Stop SOPA. And it's a great video, and you can see how smart and even keeled, and how just
the fact that they say that he killed him, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, no,
I don't buy it. This was about a year before he was.
Yeah, it wasn't even a year. It was like 9 months.
But he says in this video also that they will come back and they'll just rename it and try it again, and we'll just have to be there to stop it.
Right.
And my guess is that scared a lot of power brokers.
It did, because if you know that this was a bill that Congress came together on left and right, you know, they all were in agreement for some reason on this one bill, and they were going to pass it in 2 days, and he stopped them. It's kind of like, you know, when they went after General Flynn first, like General Flynn was on there, they did not like him. I don't know all the particulars. I can guess just from stories I've read, but they don't ever forget. They always.
I would imagine just being in that cesspool and but being a person of integrity the whole time, you're just going to piss off everybody you come into contact with.
Right.
Because they can't. You show them out to them. They try to ignore what they really are inside, and they try to gloss over it, and they get away with it until a person of integrity comes along and can call them out, or just by example, it calls them out.
And then at his funeral, the family spoke out and called out the government at his funeral, accusing the government and MIT of killing his son with their aggressive persecution. And Tom Dolan, who was the husband of Carmen Ortiz, that lady I told you about, he was angry, and he replied with criticism of the Schwartz family. He said, "It's truly incredible that in their own son's orbit that they blame others for his death and make no mention of the 6-month offer." Yeah. So they're like, he should have taken the 6 months when he didn't do anything wrong.
You should take the deal and plead guilty,
and be a felon. Be a felon for the rest of your life. And they were lashing out at them in their time of
grief. Yeah.
They're
they're flippant. They don't care about people.
They're psychopaths. Yeah. So anyway, that's all we have on Aaron Schwartz and the MIT lab. But in the days coming forward, it's interesting what's already come out about the MIT Media Lab, and I'm going to do some more research because just from that little I did last night, I was able to find out that MIT Media Lab is trying to normalize pedophilia. They're part of that movement. One thing about the Joy Ito, he's also a strategic advisor to Sony. So I might find some Twitter handles for Sony and ask them, are they going to sever ties with Joy Ito? Because we need to go after them.
With the guy who was very close to a pedophile.
Right.
This is where, we get to say, this is what's acceptable and what's not acceptable.
Right, and even though they want to drop this Epstein thing, and they want to contain it at Jeffrey Epstein, and that can only happen if we let them. We don't have any power, we're not at justice, but what happens with a lot of these cases is they go to where the public sentiment is. Like if it looks like they can't leave it alone, then they'll do something. We have to make them do it.
Yeah.
Eternal vigilance. And so we have more power than we think. And, I want to end this on the fact that we are winning. And the signs of that are everywhere.
You see it in their reactions. They're scared.
Yeah, because they're reacting to us now. Mm-hmm. And I see it all the time with a lot of people that I follow. Like, you'll see people that you and I follow that mainstream media or blue checkmark they're responding to. I saw Jake Tapper do it too, that Tiffany
Fitzhenry.
Yeah. So you'll see these people responding to us.
They can't ignore us anymore, and they're the ones that are going to end up being ignored.
Right.
And the guys, the Brian Stelters and what's her name, that psycho at MSNBC.
Oh, Matt Carroll.
I mean, they're going to be propped up for a while, and they're just going to be like these little animals trapped in their leg is trapped in a trap, and they're going to be gnashing their teeth and wailing, and they're always going to do it with this haughty tone.
Right.
Of, you're not a journalist, you're not this, but they are scared because they are reacting to us now.
And they don't get to define who is or isn't a journalist.
And I think people out there need to be prepared for. Remember how vicious it became. That probably surprised a lot of people after Trump's election in 2016.
Oh.
But as we get into the real campaign season, when we get into the new year and start the run up to November,
right. It's going to get worse.
It's going to get ugly, man.
And who knows how many more people they're going to censor. I don't know how much.
Yeah. But in the meantime, we need to keep these people in mind that going back, and Mueller is through a lot of this pedophilia stuff.
Yeah. So starting with Jeffrey Epstein was arrested July 3rd. Today is September 13th. It's not even been 2 months.
First day trolling.
And so look at what they did right before our very eyes. And then he commits suicide, and then we go crazy on the internet, right. And then they call us conspiracy theorists, and then they come back with, one camera malfunction, oops, another two, and what do you know, we moved the cellmate out of the room. So while you're thinking about that, we went back and looked at some of these other.
And real quick on Epstein's death is that when he was first arrested, everybody started. The conspiracy theory was he will never live to testify or to be prosecuted. Right. We were, you're a conspiracy theorist if you believe that he's going to get taken out in prison.
And most of us were saying
that. And now he's dead. So we've got Mueller. Mueller is a thread through so many.
He is.
Pedophilia and just.
Well, the David Asimov thing back in the late 90s in California, he was a prosecutor and for the feds, and David Asimov was Isaac Asimov's son. He was a pedophile. He produced child porn. He had like a
studio, I guess,
studio or something in his house, and Mueller comes in. So the local authorities are investigating. Mueller comes in, and they're like, don't worry about that. We got this. And they think that they're going to investigate it and get to the bottom of it. But what happens is he doesn't serve any time. He gets 6 months probation, and I can't find any information about where he is now, what he's doing. This dude was producing child porn in his house. He didn't stop that. So I suspect that the reason Mueller was brought in there was to contain it, like they're supposed to contain Jeffrey Epstein, because the fallout, who is he producing child porn for? They don't want that to get out.
And that's where all these one-time guys get maybe taken down temporarily, and then the rest of the big story just kind of goes away.
Right.
And then remember that Coach Nader at Michigan State, the gymnastics coach who abused so many girls, the FBI had information on this man for years before they actually.
They didn't do anything.
Comey. This is Comey.
Yeah.
So Comey and Mueller are buddies, protecting pedophiles, basically. That's, I think, something just tells me that pedophilia is a common thread.
I think that's how
a lot of the corruption is going on.
Think about the material on Jeffrey Epstein, like the blackmail material, which it took them years and years and years to get. And all that blackmail material is allowing someone to control very important people. So if they reveal all that work that they've done for someone is gone.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a motive they don't want to let it go.
And so then you go to George Nader. This guy was a convicted pedophile, and then Mueller uses him as one of his witnesses in the Mueller report.
And back when he was convicted of pedophilia, when the mainstream media talked about it, like he was supplying boys to like the Saudi Arabian, the Saudi, elite. So I suppose there's a Saudi connection there. You remember when Epstein, his passport said his residence was in Saudi Arabia?
Oh, yeah.
Not that means anything.
And then you've got Mueller. Mueller is head of the FBI when Epstein gets a pass from the feds. Epstein gets convicted in Florida on state charges, and they don't call it, what it is. They call it soliciting prostitution.
All right.
So basically, they call